This is Jesse Hensley.
And this is Josh Turner.
Welcome to Turn Down for What? Thank you for coming to our podcast. This is Turn Down for What, where you're going to be getting EV information a little different than what else is out there. So we're going to be talking about EV aircraft, EV watercraft, and I guess EV autocraft, if that's such a word. Autocraft, you know, it'll work. Vehicles. So we're going to be going through on this series and giving you information about the development and where we are with each one of these titles. So obviously, that's not today for everything, but we will be talking about some of the advancements in motor technology or engine technology for aircraft. It'd be motors because an engine is typically, you're going to talk about an engine as being a petrol or gasoline engine, and motors, you're going to have electric. So
introduce yourself.
I'm Jesse Hensley, by the way. I am one of the hosts here, and to my right is the other, Josh Turner.
Yes, we're excited to be doing this.
As you can tell, he's very voiceful and has a lot of information that he provides with his yes. But anyway, so today, the first thing we're going to be talking about is the announcements that General Motors made about their connectors into your vehicles. So obviously, Josh and I both are EV owners. We have the Ford F-150 Lightning. Here a couple of weeks ago, Ford made an announcement that they will be adding a location within their vehicles to charge with the Tesla system. And Josh knows more about that than I do. So what is this?
The NACS charging, which was the North American Charging Standard. This was produced with Tesla. And Elon opened up that software and that technology a couple of years back, and so now it's something that he encouraged the competition to consider it. But that's something that now we're seeing for the first time, I believe, a new wave of potential opportunity when it comes to that charging type.
And hopefully we'll have Elon on the show sometime very soon. I'm sure we'll be getting a call for that at any time. So, but anyway, so what's happened there is you have one company that has created the EV industry. So nobody talked about electric vehicles until Tesla came around and showed that it is possible to do it. Not only possible, but you could also make something that was quick, make something that was attractive, and something that would appeal to everybody. And once they did that, their big concern was, where are you going to charge these? So they went through with their money and started building large charging stations, and then smartly said, let's go to Buc-ee's, where if you have 15 or 20 minutes, you can shop for every piece of beef jerky known to man. And, walking into Buc-ee's, I've only been there a few times. It's fantastic. We have one that's getting ready to open where we are in East Tennessee, in the Gatlinburg area. And, I do see that as a opportunity for EVs to really kind of shine, because you see 1,500 different gas station pumps along these huge areas, and you have something for people to do when they walk in. So it looks like that's tailor-made for the industry, to where if you have a 15 or 20 minute downtime, that you can go in there and watch. Now, our trucks do not take 15 or 20 minutes to charge from empty to full. That's one thing we'll get into here in a little bit. But to circle back with the charging system, what Elon did was develop their system of well over 14,000 level 3 charging systems. And now you have what's called the CCS, which is the system used by General Motors. It's used by, I think, every other car company that's out there.
I mean, basically, when other car companies came into the picture, they utilized the systems that came out of Europe and other locations. But the CCS is more of a global standard for the vehicles, and Elon had produced the NACS model, but the CCS was introduced, and all of the other vehicles, Ford, GM, Chevy, all of the other vehicles with their EVs that came out were all this CCS model, and so that became the charging standard. All of the industries that were producing charging infrastructure, ChargePoint, Electrify America, and otherwise, all of them produced stations that are exclusively NACS and whatever the other one is.
So the question comes up now, is CCS dead? Now, we have been in the background working on other developments for EV charging ourselves. We have a company called Power Up America, and it is going to be focusing on EV charging through the Eastern Tennessee division, as well as other areas that go into watercraft and aircraft and things of that nature. So we have been talking to our suppliers that offer us the charging station itself. We even asked, what was a couple weeks ago, hey, is there going to be an option? This was after Ford made their announcement that they were moving over.
After Ford made the announcement, but before GM made their announcement. And in that interim, the general consensus was, we're not worried about it.
Yeah,
it's not going to be a thing,
and we're not going to be adding two to our station. And here's the kicker. So it sounds to me, and this is not anything because I have no exact knowledge of it, but it sounds to me as if it's not as simple as unplugging the system that's for CCS and then plugging in the head like an adapter. Now, I think an adapter is probably what everybody's going to be rolling with, but eventually I think one will win out over the other. And if you have already 13,000 of the ones that Tesla use that they have made in their Tesla stations, and a very robust system of delivering that power and a very low percentage of downtime already. They have perfected that system. And now you have other companies saying, we want to do that because we don't believe in the reliability of the systems that's out there already. I do feel like that could impact, especially now with General Motors. You have Ford and General Motors, the only two remaining with Tesla, large American-made car companies. I believe, maybe Jeep will come in, but since that's Fiat, we don't know if the Italian base will allow that or if they want to stay with the European model. So that's still something that's not been announced. But with the majority of American car makers saying, yeah, let's go ahead and do that, what's going to happen?
I think that we saw a pivotal shift when GM made their announcement. Within 48 hours, all of these hardware providers began announcing that they're dual expanding to CCS and NACS. And I think that that's something that it speaks to the fact that there could be a wave of change coming to where at least for a while we're going to see both on the market. But it did seem like Ford and Chevy or Ford and GM in that instance are basically making a statement against the current CCS charging infrastructure, because it's not as there's not as expansive as Tesla's network. It's not as reliable as Tesla's network. There's not as much amenities provided as Tesla's network. And so Ford, being the first one, saw a unique opportunity to basically say, hey, for our drivers, we're providing a new standard, which includes this NACS, and it will force the adaptation from all of the current CCS providers like Electrify America and ChargePoint and otherwise, but also we will see a improvement in the total network, because if vehicles like Ford and GM have NACS, then not only can they use all of the Electrify America, ChargePoint, EVgo, and otherwise, but now
I can stop at Buc-ee's.
Yeah, now you can stop at Buc-ee's, Tesla. You could go to local mall shopping centers, wherever there's that Tesla infrastructure, which, like we said, is in the thousands. It provides a lot more opportunities for drivers to have a reliable experience, and Tesla has a lot more of a reputation of uptime, consistency with infrastructure, and so that's something that will provide a more seamless experience for drivers as the transition to EVs, expands.
So his conclusion is, yeah, it's going to change everything, I think. So
I think so.
So Ford did announce when they made their announcements that they're going to have the CCS, which I'm sure they are contractually obligated or something to support that system. But and again, I have no clue on what the agreements are, but they are also going to add the other system to it. So it's not that you have to have the adapter, which currently us owning the F-150 Lightning the way it is, we will be getting an adapter, I guess, next year. And that adapter will allow us to then charge at Tesla stations or Buc-ee's, and will definitely open up the network for us. But they will also have that other port somewhere located on the vehicle to where they can charge for both of them.
And just for clarity, the Tesla supercharger network in the United States is 16,822.
Make sure you quote where you got that information from.
Electric. website. But also it says that from the Tesla website directly that there's over 45,000 superchargers globally. So
Okay.
that's a huge expansion of the network on a global scale for the car manufacturers.
Well, so there you have it. Is CCS dead? Conclusion is not there yet. We still have major automakers that's going to be using it and supporting it, but to me it appears that people have drawn a line in the sand, went to the network that's already available, and I don't see us having two standards. Because if we kicked out the metric system, we're definitely not going to have two standards for this.
Yeah, I mean,
So
we're gonna find an adaptation one way or the other.
Yeah.
And I think the next 2 years will be pivotal to see if car manufacturers for all American-made vehicles and vehicles that are imported into the United States meet that metric. That might become a new standard. What's interesting is the federal grants that are being tossed around, all require the CCS standard. My curiosity is, will we see a change in the expectation for standards, or is that something that this massive CCS network is going to be released, and then that then pulls back on the NACS movement? My hopes is that we would see a change in the policy to where we'll see NACS and CCS required side by side to provide a well-rounded experience
more money. Just throw more money at it. Let's do
but
both.
Tesla has the most vehicles on the road currently. So opening up all these new charging infrastructure, not only to Ford, Chevy, and all the current CCS drivers like ourselves, but also opening up that for Tesla drivers, not only expands
Now,
the benefit to...
again, I don't know much about Tesla. Now, you could use an adapter to get to a CCS quick charger now, correct?
Yes,
Okay,
but
so
having that as a readily available standard eliminates the need
for
and
that
opens it
adapter.
up, because if you don't have your adapter, you can't charge. It's one of those things that if we provide NACS and CCS on all these stations, it gives us the opportunity to appeal to drivers nationwide, whether that's Tesla or otherwise. And that way, based on convenience, similar to gas stations, there can be charging infrastructure a lot more frequently than we're currently seeing, which is every 50 to 100 to 200 miles apart. In my endeavors,
And in my truck, if I'm going 200 miles between stations, I'm not going that direction. So,
but the reality is I mean, on the road trips that I've taken in my truck, I enjoy the EV experience, but the charging infrastructure has to improve.
yeah, let's get into that one after this. So, from a CCS, is it dead? We think that it's on its way out, but that is information. You make your conclusion, and we'll do something right now that we really can't do no more, and that's shift gears into another conversation. And that's our experience with the F-150 Lightning. Now, for reference, we both had our trucks within the first 30 days, I believe, of the trucks being available. My truck was delivered 2 days after your truck. When you look at some of the positives and negatives, we have them both with our vehicles as well, more so mine than his, just because of the way I drive. But we've had some people that have got trucks who are social media personalities and not had a very good experience. One that comes to mind is Hoovie of Hoovie's Garage. Love his show, and he had a standard version trying to pull vehicles and everything, and it just did not work out for him in his application. Now, I can say with mine, for several months in my position as in the data industry, I was driving over a mountain 4.5 hours a day back and forth, and I was extremely pleased with the power and ability that truck had, and the cost savings. I went from $77 a day down to $7 a day in cost. So I really like the way the truck has performed for me personally. Do I think that it needs more range? Yes. That's probably my biggest peeve, I guess, for the truck, is it needs to have a little bit more range. I think Ford has addressed that by saying they're going to make less components and a lighter version of the truck. Obviously, us being Tennessee people, we are fortunate that Ford has selected the state of Tennessee for the manufacturing and the development of the F-150 Lightning coming in 2024, and that is on the western part of Tennessee near Memphis. So,
are they developing the Lightning there, or is that just the T3 that they're putting
I think
there?
the T3 is going to be there, so
But
it's
also the
everything.
Lightning
It
as
will
well?
be the Lightning.
Yeah.
You won't have again, I don't know if what we have would be available then, but I would assume that whatever they're developing today would become
Yeah.
the new F-150 Lightning to replace that in its arsenal of vehicles. So once we have that out, I guess you can compare. You have multiple vehicles that are out there, but for me personally, um, other than the range being a little low, and I get about 270, 280 miles per full charge. I do now charge
on the highway.
well everywhere because I
That's
drive
because
a
you're a
little
maniac.
bit.
Yeah.
For anybody listening to this, I do not ever break laws when speeding or anything like that. So it's no, no, no. We keep it straight that way. But
It's not about, and I tell this to everybody that hops in my truck, it's not about speeding. It's about getting to the speed limit quickly.
yeah, that we'll say that that's the case, and I have not had but just one ticket for this so far. So
I've not had one. I mean,
yeah, just not got
our
caught.
wives bet against us that we would have.
My wife won.
Yeah, I still have not gotten a speeding ticket.
So for me, like it, it's a truck. I use it as a truck. The frunk is something I never would have thought I would have used as much. I keep everything in there. So during the summertime, when you have kids going sports, I have our chairs in the front of it, keep them there. When you have kids get back with smelly items from whatever practice they had to have, they throw all that stuff in the front of it. You close it, it's done. When you go get groceries, I put everything in the front of it. Did not think I would use it like I do, but that is probably the most used item that I have on the truck. And everything else is the same as an F-150. 0 to 60, you can look it up. It's quick. I think it's right around 4 seconds. So I have not had a negative that way. There's a couple ticks here and there that we've had the dealership look at when it comes to some doors, some air doors that open and shut. What is the name of that one?
The air dam fault.
The dam air fault. Oh, air dam fault. Sorry. So that one actually is something that kind of pops up here and there, but I think that's on all trucks. I think you have.
That's a universal thing.
But from expecting to have such a low number of truck, I think we're both in the 3,000s of trucks that's been made to this point. I absolutely love the fact that today I still like the truck as much as I did when I got it. So.
Yeah, and I mean, my experience before, I was driving a 2018 F-150, and I was hesitant to jump into the EV realm, just like everybody else, with all of the concerns with range, with just the practicality of having electric truck, no gas stations. What does that mean?
That means you run out of gas.
Yeah. Me being in real estate as a primary job, have always done a ton of around town driving. And so for me with my F-150, I was driving around and I was spending $700 a month on gas when gas was at its highest peak about 2 years ago. And I was really feeling the pain at the pump, but I drove so much in real estate that, I was really like, well, I'm going to pay off this truck. I'm going to get a fuel efficient hybrid or an electric car and keep my truck because I'm 6'6". I'm a big guy. So I need a big vehicle. I mean, my first vehicle I bought on a tangent was a Ford Focus, a little tiny car. My seat had to be
a clown car. I love to see you fold up and get into that thing.
I was ducked underneath the trying to view out the windshield, and it was my first vehicle I bought for myself. But even across the board with the other vehicles I'd owned, all cars, none of them fit me. I was always ducking. There's no vehicle other than an SUV and a truck that fits somebody that's my size. And so with that being the case, the first time I got into my F-150 that I bought in 18, it really made a huge difference because of my size. It was like, wow, like this fits me. So my big hesitation, was I didn't want to buy a car and have to deal with the size, but I didn't also want to pay $700 a month in gas. And then they announced the Ford F-150 Lightning, being the first electric truck actually to come to the market since the Cybertruck has been announced for 10 years or whatever it's been.
Be quiet. I'm going to get my Cybertruck.
At some point. But, being that long, it was one of those things that for me, I was like, this is the perfect blend between the two. I had always for years wanted the Raptor. That was like my dream truck. But I would never jumped on it because gas mileage is worse than the vehicle I had. So I would have been spending $1,000 a month on gas just to have a cool looking truck. But the day that they rolled that F-150 Lightning out on the stage with the announcement, My
Me and you both clicked about the
I,
same
I was
time.
clicking
Within
that
5 minutes,
reserve
I had
button
mine reserved.
before they
So.
finished the announcement on May 19th of 2 years ago. I was clicking that button and had that reservation in. But getting my truck, it was something that, I switched, and it was a lot less stressful for me in my life than I thought it would be, because being an around town real estate agent, all I do is drive around town. The recommended vehicle fill, when you're doing day to day driving, is 90%. For my truck, it might be different for other models, but for my truck, it's 90%. So I'm at 90% when I start the day. I'll go
Yep.
do 100 miles of driving for real estate in the day, driving around to different areas, get back to my house at 65%, plug it into the wall, and by the next morning, full tank. And I'm just using the cheap energy that's coming from my house. Never needed a DC fast charger. Was basically really just enjoying the perks of being around town convenience. Um, the first time that I had to really deal with the charging network was when I went down to Florida with my wife. I took her to Orlando for a week, and I want to test out this vehicle on a long road trip, because around town, my truck, the range is advertised as 320 for the extended range battery on the Lightning Lariat that me and him both have. And, around town, I was probably seeing 350 to 375 miles, which is what's anticipated. But on the highway, the question was, what does that look like? And so, I then took the vehicle on a road trip down to Florida, and realized the charging gaps. One, it's a lot of planning goes into a road trip with an electric vehicle that's not a Tesla, because the charging infrastructure is every 100 to 150 miles apart. And so, we had to make 2 full stops on the way down and 2 full stops on the way back up. And so planning out where you're going, and if the charging station's in a Walmart parking lot, is there a restaurant that you can walk to eat lunch, or are you going to have to be running in the rain or eating in the car?
Is it going to be open
Is it going
when
to be?
you
Yeah.
get there to where you can use the bathroom or whatever? It's
And we
actually
pulled
a pretty good headache.
and we pulled up to a station, and it was full. Had to wait because I didn't have enough range to get to the next one. So I mean, like, it was an eye opening experience for, okay, the EVs on the road. You need a few things, 3 things. One, more stations on the road, which was what kind of got us down the conversation of where we're at with Power Up America. But two, we need range improvement. On the highway, 270, a car can go 400, 450. Most vehicles can, maybe around 350, 400, but most of them are, you're seeing in the low to mid fours on a road trip on the gas mileage.
Now,
So
one thing I do want to point out there, the difference between his truck and my truck is he had the tonneau cover from Ford put on the back of it, the hard cover. Now, for me, I always watched, I watched Mythbusters back when it was coming out, and there was an episode where they were talking about the air pressure in the back of a pickup truck would lift and have a little bubble that the air would go over, so the air would not be captured in the back of the truck. Now, one thing I have noticed is even when we get on the interstate, you do get a little bit more mileage than I do in the power that you have. And especially around town, you get a lot more. So I think that is definitely a difference. Is if you are looking at these trucks, definitely consider that. Again, I don't know if it makes a difference, but between his truck and my truck, they're the same trucks. He has a lot more weight, obviously, every day that goes into it. But yet, he gets better mileage than I do. So it's not fair, and I probably should have got the tonneau cover.
it's because I'm not a lead foot.
I
I've
don't think that
taken
has
road
nothing to
trips
do
with
it.
you, and it's absolutely
I
terrifying.
have no clue what he's talking about. So anyway, that's the only difference between our trucks.
Yeah.
But yeah, everything else is about the same.
So yeah, I mean, the charging station quantity needs to improve. It needs to not be every 150 miles. You need to see them. Gas stations are at every exit. You're seeing them every mile to 2 miles apart. And so there is no anxiety when it comes to a gas powered vehicle. But if you're in a gas powered vehicle and the gas stations are every 200 miles apart, it changes perspective.
It really changed
how you
perspective
drive,
when we
where
had all
you're
these
stopping.
power issues about 2 years ago, and we couldn't get fuel in this area. So there were a lot of gas stations. So even at that, at least if you had solar panels on your house and maybe a battery at your house, you can at least have solar or at least have power at your truck.
Yeah,
or
they could be more
vehicle.
reliable than the gas stations.
It might be more reliable than gas stations. I
But-
mean, it's now I'm not going to say that but around this area we did have that outage, and it was the first time I can remember ever having a issue that made it to where you really couldn't travel that much. And I was going back and forth to North Carolina for my position at a data center there, so it was something that I even had issues that way to get to work. And, that was the first time that we've had that happen. And, could you put solar on your house? Yeah. Could you put battery on your house? Yeah. Is it affordable? Probably not. That's it doesn't, the math doesn't work out yet. Potentially it could. We'll be getting into that later when we start going over our solar and our batteries for houses. We'll kind of compare some of the numbers, compare what it really would cost to do that to a house that you could support your house and charge your vehicles, and what headaches you have with it. So for the city that I live in, there are ordinances that won't let you produce more than 20 kVW at your house. And it's like, really?
Yeah.
Well, it might not be 20 kVW, it's probably 200 kVW. You have to look into it.
Yeah.
But it's not even enough to fill up your vehicle.
Time.
We'll have the ordinances and everything at least for that. And some of the cost, you're looking 20,000, 25,000. Well, you could spend 15 years at whatever your rate is now and still not have that difference up. So we'll get into those when we get into our episodes of the of infrastructure for your house.
So, I mean, to finish the points that I was making.
No, don't.
Charging station quantity needs to improve. The range on the vehicles needs to improve. 270 on the highway is not enough. And you're seeing a lot of the new vehicles that are hitting the roads. Ram has their truck that they're announcing is going to hit 500.
Now that was that one. I think the lower one was 3.
But that gets up to 500.
Hopefully. And we've not seen that yet.
And that's not been officially, that's their estimate. Chevy's supposed to be up in the 400s, and you're seeing some of these newer models like Lucid and otherwise. They're coming out with models that have longer range.
I can see. Well, they have 550, I think, for the Lucid.
Which, I mean, that means on the interstate you might get 400, 425.
But that's really good.
But that's significantly better, and that makes it a lot more usable.
And if I'm not mistaken, the Lucid would charge 200-mile range in about 10 minutes with a quick charger at 350.
And that's my fourth point is the speed of charging.
Yeah.
Our trucks being the first trucks with that large of a battery actually to hit the market. Ford, I think, decided to take a cautious approach when it came to the battery protection plan. And so they only allow the fastest that my battery has ever charged is 170 kilowatts at 170 kilowatt rate per hour. And with a 131 or 2 kilowatt battery, it does, if you're going from, 5% to 80%, that does take 30 minutes, 35 minutes, 40 minutes in some instances, depending on the speed. And the stations aren't always producing the rate that you need, but my vehicle will never go above 170. A lot of these charging stations brag that they can go up to 350 kW, and it's the vehicle that's only taking 170. And so one of the improvements that can be made to really improve the accessibility to drivers on road trips is speed of charging. Because if I can go to a station like he's saying, and get 200 miles in 15 minutes, well, that's a lot more practical than me having to wait half an hour to get 270 range, 40 minutes to get 270 range. Obviously, if you're stopping for lunch, it's not a big deal. But if you're not, me and my wife, we sat down and watched an episode of The Office, and we were just sitting there waiting while the vehicle charged. And so on a road trip, it makes sense to provide that convenience of hyperspeed charging, but that's a technology we're already seeing improve.
Hyperspeed charging. I've never heard that before.
Yep. But with
how about ludicrous speed charging? Is that something too? Is that faster than that?
That's Lucid Air's upcoming charging model.
I would think that's more Tesla's, because he has a Lucid anyway.
Yeah.
So,
but anyway, so with the speed, like Lucid, for instance, is taking upper 200s, lower 300s delivered to the vehicle, and so you'll see a much that has a longer range. It has a quicker charge, and so that's something that, with those type of vehicles, that's going to be the new standard. And I think that's what's going to really, those 4 topics would really improve user confidence in the EV space.
I think so too. So long story short, things get better with time. Who would have thought that? So that's a good thing to have happen.
And technology is improving. And I mean, the federal grants are coming out this year that, in 1 year's time, whether it's NACS or CCS to tie back to the original point, we are going to see charging infrastructure improve. Within the next 2 years, we will see charging stations every 50 miles, which for me as an EV consumer with my truck, even if I didn't get one that charges faster and all the other variables, that instantly improves road trip confidence because it provides access where, one, I can use Tesla stations with my truck with the adapter that Ford's going to be providing.
And we're going to get into that too on another episode where we're going to break down what the grants are that are out there and what they were designed to do, how many stations roughly that they're expecting, and then what roughly the time period is that some of these grants are starting to come out. So then everybody that has an EV can say, okay, am I going to wait until this happens? Because then it's going to be even more difficult to get a vehicle. Try to order you an F-150 Lightning right now and see how long you got to wait.
I heard that they are getting closer with, I mean, they're supposed to be ramping up. I think they said they're going to try to make 200,000 this year.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, I think that within a year, we're going to probably see very likely the opportunity for those type of vehicles to come back into order.
And then you're going to have Chevys, which is their pickup has not been released yet. They have the Hummer and the Hummer H, the traditional Hummer with the SUV version. You have Rivian. So once we get into what else, and again, that's going to be another episode we're going to get into, is what else is out there and what do we know? We have a friend who has owned a Rivian for a while now, and we may have him on. He does a lot of work in the out of his truck as well. So it'll give you an experience of what he's had on the positives and negatives of that vehicle.
We'll break down each manufacturer and what the kind of the general reviews are for those vehicles.
Yeah, we probably need to do that, is have a specialized. Today was Ford Day. We talked about our Fords.
We'll do more about Ford because we like Ford.
We like Ford. I'm a Ford guy. So also in my past, I used to race, and I had a Ford that I raced. So I've always been partial to Ford. But again, we're open for all manufacturers, and as long as the development's happening in a positive way, we're excited about where the direction of that is going.
There's several vehicles that are coming out that excites me.
Yep. So we're getting close on time for this episode. If you have any questions or concerns or want to comment, you can probably, we don't have this email set up, but I was thinking we probably need to do that, is just hit info@power-upamerica.com, and we'll look over what questions and concerns, and at the end of the show, if there's anything that pops up that we would like to help you out with or answer that we can, we'll go ahead and do that at that point. You can also visit our website, power-upamerica.com, if you want to see what our stations are looking like and where we are with that process. We really can't get into too many details on where we're going with the state, but we'll do that in another episode as well. Is there anything else you would like to discuss today?
I think that's pretty good.
Well, that's pretty good. So, perfect. This has been an episode of Turn Down for What? Thank you for coming.
Turn down for what?